Merry Christmas to everyone. I'll fill in some blanks on the introduction just to tell you who I am. My name is Ganesh. I am from Chennai originally, Tamil speaking. I know I met quite a few of you here. But I'm actually born in Mumbai many years ago now. And grew up here for 3 years. When I finished my 12th, I took the joint entrance exam for IIT, got in, and came to Mumbai again and spent the last 4 years of my life in India, in Hawaii at IIT. The greatest leader that I know had 12 direct reports, right? And his point to them was, if you want to be the greatest of leaders, you must be the greatest of servants, right? The way the world looks at it, they look at it to say, you lord over someone else. And his point was, you be the servant of someone else, you serve someone else, right? It's a very unique concept, and one of the hallmarks of servant leadership is the sacrifice. It's what we give, not what we take, right? It doesn't mean to put ourselves down. It means to put ourselves last. It's hard being a servant leader, right? Because we're naturally self-focused, right? And to put ourselves last is a hard thing to do. But I do want to offer to you what I think is the future of leadership. And the first one in there is servant leadership, which is putting ourselves last. But that might sound a little up there. I mean, is that real? Are people really servant leaders, right? So just to make sure you get something out of this talk, I'm going to give you something a lot more concrete as well, which I think is going to be part of the future of leadership, which is speed. Speed is your friend, time is your enemy, right? Everything we do, we're going to have to do faster, right? And I'll give you an example of this. Elon Musk, right, the founder of Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, probably lots of other things that I don't know about. They were putting together a data center with 100,000 NVIDIA GPUs. Now, this is a story told by Jensen Huang, and if you don't know who Jensen Huang is, he is the CEO of NVIDIA, so I'm assuming it's an accurate story. The average company takes 4 years to put together a data center of this size. How long did it take Tesla? 19 days. Right? How do you do it in 19 days when everyone else takes 4 years? Right? I mean, if I knew the answer, I'd be doing it. But my point is that we're not going to be able to say, let me do 10% more efficient, let me do 20% more efficient. It's a radical change in thinking, right? To even believe that's possible is hard, right? It's going to take breaking down of silos. It is enabling small teams to execute at great speeds, right? All the normal ways of working, I think, are not going to be super effective going forward if you want speed, right? If you're happy doing it in 4 years, of course, right? So, but speed takes us thinking about things very differently. One of the things I am going to do when I get back, it's on my list to do, starting January 1st, is most of us spend our time in meetings. Would you agree? Yeah. How many meetings are you in on a daily basis? 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 meetings a day, right? I mean, how do we ever get work done in 10 meetings a day, right? Well, most people don't get any work done. This is why it takes 4 years to put together a data center, right? So maybe the best advice I can give you today is go back and cancel every meeting for next year, except your bosses. Okay, I don't want you fired. Okay, and then start adding back meetings only if there is some value in the meeting, right? Otherwise, this is where we lose time, right? I'm going to switch to a little bit to AI and talk about what does it mean as a leader, how do you deal with AI? Now, most people here, I think, are not going to become data scientists, right? You're not looking to get into the technology of AI. You may be looking to use AI, right? And I'll give you some basics. We have an expert here. So, by the way, if you don't agree with me, remember the deal. If you don't agree with me, nod your head, okay?
You're always right.
Yeah, thank you. We got that. So, okay, AI there's two, at a very high level, you can look at it in two different ways. There's narrow AI and there is broad AI. Okay, narrow AI is think of a in a hospital and a radiology or something or CAT scans or something, and you can look at thousands of these things, and somebody is tagging it to say if this happens, this must mean cancer or tumor or something like that, right? So after it's done 1,000 times, the AI model learns it, and so the 1,001st time, the AI model can do it for you and at least give you a reasonably accurate answer, right? So this is narrow AI. It's focused on one thing. It's focused on giving you an answer. No, it's up to you to make sure the answer is right as well. Okay. Broad AI is taken everybody's imagination by storm, right? And this is generative AI, where something new is being generated. It's not doing a task more efficiently. It's doing something new which has never been done. Okay. Think of ChatGPT, for example, right? And one serious challenge in schools today is how to get students to do assignments, which are not just fed straight into ChatGPT and get answers out of it. Right? So when we deal with things like broad AI, and I'll give you an example of this. So have you ever got onto a website and used customer support, and then there's a bot on the other side, right? This is broad AI conversing with you. The problem with these bots is they don't understand anything I'm saying, or they know to say three things, and I'm asking for the fourth thing, right? So I don't always get the answers which are super helpful. So, but this is version 1 of customer support with AI, right? Version 2 is saying instead of replacing people with AI, get your customer support people help. So when somebody asks them a question, the AI does the search, but there's a person in there actually doing the customer support. Right? So we'll start seeing all this. This is all going to be part of our life, right? But assuming for a sake that it does, right? It can drive you to work, drop you off at work, and while you're working, the car becomes a self-driving Uber taxi, right? So now your car goes to work, right? So it's a different business model, right? So I don't know if that's out in the market yet or not. If there is not, then you're welcome to try it out. Okay, just remember to send me 10% and make some money, okay? So I think AI will be net positive. We'll have lots of wonderful things with AI. But there's also going to be ton of things we're going to have to face as leaders, This is the idea that people and technology can come together, right? If you thought Ramu was weird, you should listen to this one. Okay. Can we re-engineer humans to become one with technology, right? And the idea is this. See, for example, let's say getting older, right? And your hip hurts, you can do a hip replacement, right? Knee hurts, you can do a knee replacement. At some point in time, you can replace every part of your body, right? Except perhaps the brain. But the AI could help with that as well. And this is this idea, right? That people can live forever, right? Eternally. All you got to do is add some technology. Imagine running on the Apple operating system, or still Windows operating system, and you get a blue screen of death, But you add on technology, you add on some drugs, you add on AI, humans can live forever. Now, there's actually lots of work happening in this area. It might surprise and shock you to hear that, but there's a lot of work happening in this area. And there are people who have died, but who have frozen their brains such that when the technology catches up, they can reclaim their brains. Right? So as AI gods, I'm going to get into that a little bit. I know you're all wondering what is this connection between AI and God, so let me get to that. The goal of this kind of AI is actually to replace God. Okay? Because the idea is this: humans can become gods because we can live forever. Right? Now, is that possible? I think lots of things are possible, but there are obviously some downsides to AI in the sense that AI lacks feelings, right? It lacks emotions, right? It's processing a lot of things. It's computing a lot of wonderful things. It'll simplify a lot of things, but it is not a person. I love my wife. I love my daughter, but I'm not going to love Ramu. Right? And so Ramu may be useful, but that's quite different from saying, this is my child, right? So I think these are things we're going to have to struggle with as a society. At what point does the bot have its own identity? Is a bot a person? Right? Do they have voting rights? Right? So I think we're going to have to struggle with a lot of this. And so the challenge I see with transhumanism is they're looking to replace God, because we can become gods. We can live forever. We can become gods. So I'll transition a little bit into my story. Like I said, I'm from Chennai originally, Tamil speaking, not very good Tamil anymore, but for whatever it's worth, Tamil speaking. And grew up in a typical family, as you would think, as a Tamil Brahmin. Went to the to IIT Bombay right here in Hawaii, a few kilometers away. And the first thing which struck me was everybody around me was an atheist, right? And I found it easy to be an atheist, because when you're doing thermodynamics and calculus and quantum mechanics, the last thing I was thinking of was God, right? Those two worlds didn't seem to meet for me, Obviously, I met a lot of smart people. And like I said, everyone around me was an atheist, essentially. So I became an atheist. I didn't think very much about it when I became an atheist. I had to think my way out of it, but I didn't think much going into it. Many years later, I got my bachelor's here in chemical engineering. I'm a chemical engineer. Moved to the US, got my master's. And along the way, I met some people who had a dramatic impact on my life. And it all had to be, was in the area of intelligence, which is why I was talking a little bit about artificial intelligence. This one was the natural kind. Okay. Was one of the wealthiest people I knew. And another one was a lawyer. And very interesting to me, they were all very analytical. I'm a very analytical guy, They were all very analytical. And they all believed in God. And I found this very strange, because these two worlds were independent worlds for me. I didn't see them overlapping. And yet, for them, this was the core of their existence. It was not incidental, it was the core of their existence. So it intrigued me. And I went through a 5-year journey. And I looked at a lot of things. And the question I asked myself was, can I prove that there is a God or there isn't a God? On Mars would be evidence that there is at least intelligent life on Mars. Would you agree? Right? I would tell you that the cell is even more complex than an iPhone. And we are left with this conundrum on how did this come about without an intelligent mind to direct it. I'll give you an example. Every cell is built like a city. It has highways, it has checkpoints. Not everything can enter a cell. It has walls, of course. It has a defense system, right? The immune system. It has waste disposal. It works better than most cities, actually, to be honest. It has executive functions. It has power plants. Any biology majors here? I know there's a physician here. I don't know how many of you are into biology, right? Mitochondria, right? As the power plants. And then, to me, the most interesting of all, the DNA, which is people call it blueprints, but it's a library of information on how to do things, how to build proteins, how do they fold, right? How do we make all these molecules? And what fascinated me is this: the English language has 26 letters. The genetic language has 4 letters. It's a semantic language. It's words. It's telling a story. Every one of us is unique. It's the world's longest word, 3.5 billion characters long. Right? When you see words, you don't look to physics or biology or chemistry to explain words. You look to a mind. who created that word. For example, I saw a sign here, it says fire exit, right? We don't look at fire exit and say, did physics cause that sign, right? Did D and E have a kid and make F? It's not biology. It's not gravity which created that sign. There's a mind, somebody who's giving us some instruction. If there's a fire, head out that way, right? So, isn't it beautiful to know that there's a language, the language of God, written in every cell of our being, unique to us. But it's functional. I mean, it's not a random garbled words. It is instructions on how to make things, how to make different proteins, how to make all the things which make you, right? I found it fascinating. Said, where did this information come from, right? I wrote a book a few years ago, and when you see a book, you assume an author, right? You don't have to see an author to know that there is an author. Why? Because of information, right? It's not just biology. Same thing is true with physics. I'll tell you a story about Einstein that I find fascinating. Einstein developed his, by the way, you can repeat these stories and you're going to look super intelligent in front of your friends, okay? So when Einstein developed the general theory of relativity, it was a theory about gravity. And most people, Newtonian view of gravity is you drop something, it falls to the ground. So all masses have some attraction. Einstein had a very different view of gravity. He said big masses curve space and small masses go along the space curved by the big masses. An easy example is if you think of a trampoline and you drop a bowling ball on it. The bowling ball curves the space of the trampoline, right? Then you drop a tennis ball on it, it's going to go by in the curve that the bowling ball created. To his surprise, when he used that to predict the universe, which is what Einstein set out to do, it showed an expanding universe. He didn't like it, so he did what most scientists do under the circumstances. He fudged his equations. Right? Later called it the worst mistake of his life. The reason he fudged it is he didn't like what it was implying. He was implying what? If the universe is expanding, then you go back in time, what do you get? A single point, right? Long enough, 13.8 billion years ago, the universe is a single point. Everybody thought it was a joke. They called it the Big Bang. The Big Bang was named by its critics as a joke about Einstein's work. It was not until he saw Hubble's work, which showed that the galaxies had a redshift and they're flying away from each other, and lots of the scientific evidence, that Einstein changed his mind about it. The reason he didn't like it is because it begs the obvious question. This here is a little bang. What caused it? Me hitting the podium. If you need an explanation for a little bang, do you need an explanation for the Big Bang? Right? And he didn't like the theological implications of it. So I spent this over 5 years, I went through this process of following science. Because I was not looking for religion. I was just interested in where the science led me. And it led me to the fact that I proved to myself, I persuaded myself that there is God. The evidence was very strong that there is God. And I was left to figure out what do I do with this now. I don't know if any of you have ever driven in a flood before. I remember being stuck in a flood once. I couldn't reverse because the waters were too high. I couldn't stay where I am because the waters were rising. I had one way to go, which was forward. And I had to do it quickly because that was starting to rise up as well. That's how I felt. I had done the research, I had the evidence in front of me. I didn't know quite what to do with it. But I knew I couldn't go back and I couldn't stay where I was. I had to move forward. I just had to understand what forward meant. Many years ago, I decided to follow that evidence and accepted Christ and became a Christian. It's a long story on why I chose to become a Christian. I saw the evidence for God. I actually followed a similar process analyzing the claim that Jesus rose from the dead. I think you'll all agree that's a really weird claim. This is not a normal thing. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Stuti there for the great work she did on the violin. One of the ones, you should give her a hand actually. Let's give her a hand. One of the songs she played was Mary, Did You Know, right? Did you know that the child you delivered will one day deliver you, right? And so there was evidence that I found, and I'm just sharing this with you. You don't have to do anything with it. I just want to share my journey with you. But one of the there's a prophecy about Jesus before he came, which is to say he would be born of a virgin, which is another really weird claim, right? I mean, we don't need OBGYNs to tell us that's not going to happen, right? But that was the claim. And even Mary was surprised herself. And she records her response when she was told that she would have a child. You should go read it. I mean, to me, I made a video maybe 6 months ago called Why Jesus is the Engineer's Dream. Because the evidence for Jesus I found compelling. Obviously, I realize this is a thorny subject. Right, and I'm not pushing it on you. I just want to share with you that as an engineer, I found the evidence to be compelling when he will be born. How did the three wise men know to go to Bethlehem? Because there was a prophecy of saying he was going to be in Bethlehem. And they followed a star. Well, that's unusual, right? Well, there was a comet which went through. This Canadian astrophysicist Hugh Ross talks about it, right? So, and Pearl asked me to talk about what impact did it have on me when I accepted Christ. The evidence is there. You can go look at it. I've written a book about it. I actually have a few copies. You're welcome to take one. But it was really, when I wrote the book, I was not sure that people would, what impact it would have if I wrote the book. It was about the intersection of science and faith, and I didn't know how people were going to respond to it because it was not a super popular topic when I wrote it. So, what I did? I wrote it under a different name, right? Because I didn't want anybody to know I was the one who wrote the book, right? Because it meant taking a risk. And if there's anyone who doesn't like taking a risk, it's a professional, right? We care way too much about our tribes, right? Our professional tribes. We care about our careers. We wonder what other people will think. It was not until I realized other people were not thinking, and if they were not thinking about me for sure, right? That I decided to come out. The thing with tribes is this: there's this theory of consensus in tribes, right? Everybody wants to follow that crowd, and it can really take us off on the wrong path. And tribes tend to have enforcers. This is the real interesting thing about tribes. People don't know they have enforcers. Sometimes the enforcers themselves don't know they're enforcers. But you try steering slightly away from the consensus of the community, and you'll see how quickly you're steered back to the mainstream opinion of the community. So I wasn't sure how welcome it was. I wasn't sure all my friends were going to say. I wasn't sure what impact it had on my career. So I wrote it under another name. It was not until about 2 years after the book came out, I said, of all the things I did with my life, this was probably the most useful thing I did. And here I was trying my best to hide it. So I came out of the closet. And the amount of support I've received is incredible. The amount of hate I've received is incredible. I did a video with Sean McDowell, who's a professor, and he asked me a lot of questions. And until then, I didn't know if you stepped up to be in the public eye, whether or not you get support, you're definitely going to get hate. And I realized that's part of it. If I wanted to present these ideas, I just had to deal with it. It was my problem. It was not theirs. Right? I'll go back to transhumanism. Men becoming gods. You know what I found strange about it? was the very opposite of what Jesus was saying. He's like, I'm God becoming man, not man becoming gods. You know? Transhumanism looks for eternal life by adding on technology and drugs. But eternal life is in the hearts of everyone. Right? I'll give you the example of 3 CEOs. 3 CEOs were talking about their legacy. What do you want to be remembered when you die? When people pass by the last time by your coffin or by your body before they put it in the fire, what do you want people to say? The first one said, I want people to think of me as a visionary leader. He was able to see other people were not able to see. He was able to see before anyone else. Okay. The second one said, I want to be known as a people's leader. How he created leaders, not followers. Right? Okay. As the third person. And the last time, before your body is about to be thrown into the flames or buried, when people walk by and see your body, what do you want them to say? He thought about it and said, I want them to say, oh look, he's moving. Eternity is on our hearts. Legacy is great, but we'd rather just be alive. Right? Who wants to die, right? But that was the message as I got into Jesus' word that I sensed. There was eternal life. I very quickly came to the conclusion that Christianity is only true if it's literally true. I could prove it, I could disprove it. It's the essence of science. How do we disprove it? All of following Christ it revolves under one event in history. It was not even what we're celebrating today, the birth of Christ. It was the resurrection of Christ. You can prove it, you can disprove it. I chose to chase it down to see, can I do either? I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not trying to prove or disprove. I'm just trying to see where it leads. I looked at medical evidence, forensic evidence, incredible amounts of evidence, eyewitness testimony to this evidence. All this evidence is based on eyewitness testimony. People wrote it down so other people can now go look at it. There's one I love which has to do with a physician explaining how did Jesus actually die. Right? He died of pericardiac effusion. When your heart is trying to pump blood and just can't keep up. And it tends to form a thin layer of water around the heart. And the testimony of John was one of the Roman soldiers puts a spear in Jesus' side and said what came out was blood and water. And the first century nobody knew about pericardiac effusion. Why was he talking about blood and water? Well, because that's what he saw. So they were giving eyewitness testimony, which really shocked me, right? So that eyewitness, the testimony is available for us to look today. Prove it, disprove it, right? That's why I say it's an engineer's dream. I'm going to close out here with the way I started, servant leadership. The leader I talked about who had the 12 direct reports, I think you probably guessed who he was by now. Anyone wants to take a guess? Jesus, right? He had 12 disciples and they were fighting over who's the greatest. And said, you want to show if you are the greatest? Become the greatest servant. It was a little hard for me to follow because in India when we think of servant, we think of jadu, pocha stuff, right? Mop the floor, sweep the floor. No, we don't think of leadership from that perspective. But what he was saying is you got to be willing to sacrifice everything. Right? Now, did he do that? Yeah, he sacrificed his life. Right? On the cross, we sang about this. Right? So now sometimes people will be willing to sacrifice for somebody who's really good. Right? Sometimes people sacrifice for their country, like the armed forces, for example. Right? Or somebody may be really good and people sacrifice on their behalf. But who sacrifices on the behalf of people who are not good? Right? And that's what struck me about the sacrifice. The scientific evidence was there. the depth of sacrifice was there. And eventually that's what got to my heart. I said, there's something here, and that's all I offer to you. I don't believe in throwing things at people. I'm offering you evidence. You do with it as you choose to do. Right? It's a little bit like chewing gum, right? If you like the flavor, keep chewing. If you don't like it, the samosa is on its way. If you like reading, I recommend a book called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. He was a lawyer who dug into it and asked a lot of different people, physicians, other people questions, because he was just looking for the truth. And I was like that, I was just looking for the truth. I didn't want to make truth. I don't think there's anything else my truth than your truth. There's only truth. It's up to us to find it. Right? I'll leave you with that. I want to thank the Logos group for inviting me up here. I've been talking to Pearl, and he's been a blessing, and to Joel, whom we first met up, and it's been really phenomenal talking to you. For me, it's a dream come true to come back in the city that I was born in and be able to share some ideas. I hope you like the ideas. But if not, again, my point was to share it. It's up to you what you do with it, you know. And great job by all the singers over here, the New Life Church group, and the other singers. Very talented. Really appreciate what you guys did. With that, let me bring back Pearl.